Welcome everyone to Tech Talk Live, and this is episode 57, I believe. And today, I am happy to say I'm joined by Andy Hine, who is an engineer on the Alfresco team, and Martin Bergelyoung, who is from Ixus. And both have been around Alfresco for years and years, so very experienced people. And we're going to be talking about Solr and Alfresco today. And before I get too far, I need to get a couple of plugs out of the way. So the first thing is that don't forget that DevCon is this November 6th and 7th in Berlin, and the 14th and 15th in San Jose. And registration is now open. You can go to devcon.alfresco.com and sign up for DevCon today. We also will have, just like last year, we will have a optional training day the day before the conference starts. So if you want to show up in Berlin on the 5th of November, you can have a full day of Alfresco training. And if you show up on the 13th of November in San Jose, California, you can have a full day of Alfresco training as well. So anyway, everyone get excited about that. The last plug is that the Dashlet Challenge is starting up, and we haven't officially put out any rules or instructions yet, but we will do that today or tomorrow. And basically, it's going to be like last year, where you have until the end of August to develop some cool add-on for Alfresco Share, and then the top winners will get a tablet. And this year we're giving away Android tablets to celebrate the Android client that Alfresco will be releasing here in fairly short order. So other than that, just a reminder that this session is being recorded, and we will get out the recording and the slides as quickly as humanly possible. And other than that, I guess I will turn it over to Andy and Martin. So let's, Martin, let's talk about Solr.
Can everybody hear me now? Yeah.
Yeah, sound good.
It's Martin here. Cool. So I'll just kick off my presentation here. Can you see this presentation now? Or I need to actually share first. Okay, sorry. Share my desktop. Cool. Right, so just a quick slide about who I am and so on. So I work for Ixus for 5 years with different Alfresco projects. We also do XML databases like MarkLogic and Drupal stuff. I blog at esemstuffblogspot.com, where I wrote quite recently a blog about Solr and how it's integrated with Alfresco. I've written a book, Alfresco 3 Business Solutions, Certified Engineer. I presented at last year's DevCon also. And currently I'm working for quite a big client in London where we have different Solr installations. So the presentation, we're going to keep it short because this session is mostly about hands-on, showing different things by running the software. But we're going to go through quickly here about what's Solr, if you don't know that, and how it's integrated with Alfresco, why Alfresco would use it, and what's searchable and not, and when you wouldn't use it, and then go straight into demo. So Apache Solr is basically wrapping Apache Lucene, that library for indexing and searching. And it was created by this guy called John Xeely for CNET and then contributed to Apache. Version 1.4, released November 2009. That's the version that Alfresco is using. There are much newer versions, but that's the one we'll be looking at. It runs in a servlet container you can talk to it via REST-based API, so you can get to search and post to put stuff there. It has a quite nice plugin interface, so you can extend it, which people have done with so-called search components. So when a search request comes in, you can do stuff like find out documents that are more like the one you just hit, and results highlighting and other things like that. When you look at Solr, you can look at it in 4 areas. So you have a schema. If you're thinking about Alfresco, it has metadata and kind of a schema, a content model for its content. So when you use Solr, you also have a schema. This is new compared to when you were using Lucene. There wasn't any schema defined in your documents, fields, and what types they are, and so on. And the neat thing with the schema is that you can configure how all the text in the document should be broken down, tokenized. So, and then you can say, okay, if I have these tokens, they should be fed into token filters. So you can have a filter, for example, that does stemming. So when it hits cats, for example, you can say, that's actually the root word for that is cat, so just use that instead. So you can create an analyzer chain when you do indexing and search. Then you want to configure the system, so you do that with the Solr config.xml, which contains a lot of request handlers that kind of takes your incoming requests and applies search components. For example, those I was talking about in the previous slide. You have cache settings and all the plugins. And then you have indexing and searching with get and post. So,
now, Martin, let me ask you a question real quick, if you don't mind. On the schema XML and Solr config XML, if you want to change that, is there an extension? Do you use the normal Alfresco extension mechanism to make those changes, or do you just change
So we'll look at the schema a bit more later, but basically the out-of-the-box Alfresco schema is quite small. So if you have looked at Solr before, you know that the schema contains loads of fields for different things, like a product ID, things like that. If you look at the Alfresco schema that they've defined, it's basically, you have to have one field called ID, that is a statically defined field. Then the rest of the fields are defined dynamically. Because when you work with Alfresco, there are loads of content models, and you will define new content models. So Alfresco couldn't possibly know all kind of fields that you wanted to be able to search on. So you can, as you go along, you can define new fields and field titles if you want to, but probably not. Just the fields, and you can refer, when you define your fields, to your content models. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Cool. Security. There isn't any security if you just use Solr out of the box. So that's why Alfresco has put on SSL and like client cert authentication and so on. That we'll see. We'll also look at how you can turn that off if you're in a production environment behind the firewall. So basically, Alfresco needs to secure that. If you've been working with Alfresco, you know about Lucene and you know about the index. When you talk about Solr, you're going to hear people pretty quickly talk about something called a Solr core. A core is basically just an index. So for example, when we look at the Alfresco integration, you're going to have 2 cores, which are basically 2 indexes. So if you look at this picture, it shows you the integration that Alfresco has done to use Solr. So it uses Solr 1.4, so there is a web application, a new web application that you're going to see, Solr.war. Then there are 2 indexes, course. There is the workspace. That's basically live content that you are working with from the user interfaces. And then when you soft delete something, it ends up in the archive store, so you can search that also. So when you do a search from Alfresco, either the Alfresco Explorer or Alfresco Share, you will hit those URLs that you see there at the top of the picture. It says search request. So /Solr/Alfresco /Solr/archive. And then Solr will return XML. That's basically how Alfresco talks to Solr. Then Solr wants to actually know stuff about content models and permissions and so on, and text content of a particular document. Then it calls back to Alfresco with different URLs to get different stuff, like you can see at the bottom part of the picture there. And all this communication is by the default secure. So you're going to have lots of certificates and stuff that you need to take care of if you want to stay that way, because the certificate that comes out of the box, they are only valid for, they are basically Alfresco certs, so they're only valid for 1 year or something. So why would you change from using Lucene to using a search server? So one good thing is that if you have a bigger installation, you might want to separate authoring and publishing of content with how you search for content. You might have millions of people searching for content coming in through a big architecture, through a cluster of application servers that wants to hit kind of a cluster of search slaves or something like that. That's not fully implemented yet. I'm just talking conceptually where this all aims to be in the future. And then you want to have one master search server where you do the rights authoring. And all that's going to be possible with this. You want to have easier clustering. So what does that mean? Currently, when you do a cluster with Alfresco, each node would have its own index tracking the database, what's new in the transactions there, and then update the index on each node. Here, each node is just using a search server or a search cluster, depending on the load. So it's much easier. Performance is also improved. Normally, when you do a search in Alfresco without Solr, you would have permission checks, in-transaction permission checks. So before you get the results, all the permissions and everything are checked. And if you have loads of results coming back, you're going to have a lot of time going to that. So in Solr, you actually have at the query time, you look at the permissions, so it's much faster. And path searches are faster also. You can also get better support for cross-locale, so if you have kind of text field or multilingual text fields from different languages, you can get support for that. So what's searchable? As we've seen, the live content and soft deleted. If you have the kind of WCN content working with that, you're not going to be able to use that. I think there's some kind of tenant searches available in some versions, but maybe not in all. If you want to use the records management, that's not going to work. Also, if you're thinking of running in another serverless container than Tomcat, that's not going to work. And if you're dependent on in-transaction indexing, I didn't mention that so much, but here everything is going to be in an asynchronous way. So the Solr server is going to every, for example, 15 seconds by default. It's going to hit Alfresco and ask, do you have anything new that I need to index? So it's not happening while you're uploading a document. It's not indexed in that transaction.
Yeah,
right.
Martin, it's Jeff. I think it's important for people to know that when they are using Solr, that it's eventually consistent. It's not immediately consistent. So there is that delay that you mentioned. So that is a trade-off. But I do have a question about the Tomcat point. So does this mean that, is it just that the Solr War has to run in Tomcat and I could run Alfresco in, say, JPass or something? Or it is, I don't understand the limitation here. Why is it that you can't use
I would probably have to ask Andy for that. I don't know exactly.
Andy, do you want to illuminate us on this point?
So there's no limitation as far as I'm aware. Solr is just more of a pain to set up in other containers. I don't think we've got the instructions out for people to do that, but I believe we have done it in QA environments.
Okay. So it's obviously if you install from the binary installer, you're going to get Tomcat, but you're saying that it could be possible to use another container. It's just that it isn't back.
Yeah, so it is not supported yet or something like that.
Yeah, so as I say, it's going through the QA things. I think the major problem is that it's relatively straightforward to do all the bits and pieces for Tomcat, and that is, installing the web app, making it point to the right configuration that also comes with Solr, and also being able to set up SSL. So you've got those three things to solve in any web container you choose to use.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so basically, if you can figure out how to install the web app and configure everything and set up SSL, then you should be fine.
All right, cool. All right, let's dig into this and see how it all works. So I have a kind of a demo script here that I'm going to follow. So I'm going to look at the fresh install first. So I've just installed 4.02, the latest enterprise version. So I just have straight out of the installation package. I have that installed, and that comes with Solr kind of integrated and enabled. So if you log in to share and you go here to the admin, you need to log in as administrator, and you go to more and then more, you have information about search. Here to the left you have Lucene information. You're going to see all Lucene information even if it's not actually enabled. And you have Solr information here. If you click Search Manager, you're going to see that Solr is enabled. So there is now a search subsystem. So there is one configuration for Lucene and one for Solr. And you can actually view all the properties for the Solr subsystem here, and this corresponds to properties in Alfresco public properties, which you are probably familiar with. That's the main configuration file for Alfresco under Tomcat shared directory. So that's where you usually want to change stuff. If you go in here and you say, okay, I want to run on 9443, and then save it, it's going to be in the database, and you then cannot go back and change it in the configuration file. So for production, I usually use the configuration files and then put them in Puppet in a bigger environment, so you can have more control of it.
Hey Martin, it's important to note that everything that you're showing right here is only available in Enterprise, because this is all requiring JMX, which is enterprise only. So the ability to configure how search works in community is not available in the admin console. You have to use the properties files.
Yeah, right, that's true. Yeah. Right, so let's see what we are supposed to do. Okay, let's actually jump into the directories which are the same if you use community. Right, so where does it all start? Okay, so Solr is a web app, and you have a new directory under Alf data called Solr. And here you got all the stuff that is related to Solr and its integration with Alfresco. And Solr uses something called Solr Home, and this is actually Solr Home, and that's configured in Tomcat, Conf. If you look, just quickly, if you look in web apps, you wouldn't see a Solr wall there, but you see a Solr Explorer web app, so that's coming from Catalina localhost, and there is a web app context here. So if I open that up, I will see that it picks up from Alf data Solr, it picks up an Apache Solr war there, and it's attached war, so it has classes and stuff from Alfresco. I'm not going to talk too much, but if you wanted to use a newer Solr, I think it would be a bit of a trouble to do that. So you would have to stick to one from. And here it picks up where Solr Home is and where it can find everything. So when the web app starts, it's going to find Solr Home, and in Solr Home, it's going to have everything it needs. Here, the first thing it's going to find is this file Solr XML, which is going to tell Solr how many cores, indexes it should take care of. And it kind of points directly here. The Alfresco is basically the workspace store with live content, and it's configured and managed here in this directory, and the archive store in this directory. And that corresponds to these two directories here. Under this directory, you will see the same kind of other subdirectories and configurations. You have two directories here that you wouldn't see in a normal Apache Solr installation. I'll come to them in a bit. But this conf is like a standard Solr directory layout with files. So Solr config, Solr core properties here, it will tell Solr where is Alfresco. If you remember the picture, Solr talks back to Alfresco to get content model information, permissions and stuff. And that's how it knows where Alfresco is. It also points out where data for the index should be stored. So here I'm looking at live content workspace store. So to find out where the index files are, I'll just go to home and then workspace, spaces store. So that would be home, workspace, spaces store, index. Here's the index for all live content, basically a Lucene index that you can open from Luke index tool, for example. Right. Let's go back to the workspace conf for this core. So here you would have a schema that you want to use for this index. So if we now look at this, you will see something completely different from if you were using Apache Solr, which has a gigantic kind of schema with all kinds of fields that you might want to use. Here, you would just see one ID field, kind of a key, and its type is Alfresco data type, and then you will see a dynamic field. So you might be asking, so how does this work? Basically, when Alfresco wants to index something, it sends, let's see if I have an example of how that looks like. I thought I had some here, docs. So when you want to add, you send an XML, you post an XML document that looks something like this. So basically the only field that's actually been statically defined is this ID field. The rest is just dynamically. So when you have a star in the schema like this, it will pick up all these other fields here that Alfresco is using when it posts information about a document, metadata. So if you have worked with content models, you will recognize these fields here. So basically the field names that are used in Solr for indexing are corresponding to all the content models fields names. Right. So
Martin, let me
now
and ask a question. I'm sorry to interrupt. But I think there might be some confusion from some people that are watching this, because I think there's some questions coming through about what they have to do to expose their custom content model to Solr, and the answer is they don't have to do anything. I mean, Alfresco does that for you, right?
exactly.
You're just showing kind of how Alfresco has configured Solr under the covers, which might be useful in some cases if you're going to, extend the functionality in some way, but is not required if you're just simply indexing custom types, for example.
Yeah, you might want to change what type is used. So basically, under Alfresco resources here, you will have data type analyzer. So if you look at the default one here, you recognize the Alfresco data types here and what analyzer you want to use. If you wanted to change these for different layers, you can do that here. But you can also, for example, if you had a date and you wanted to handle that differently, I can just show you. I don't have that in the model there, but I can show you how that would look like. It's in the blog that you can read after this. Here, if I wanted to use a different class than the Alfresco data type here, I could, here I'm defining a new field type called tdate, and I'm using a different class for that. And then I'm defining a new field from my content model here, and I'm saying use this type here for better performance for range date queries. So you can actually extend the model by doing something like that. Right. So that's
one other question is about version stores. So we talked about how the version store is not being indexed, and a person is asking why that is. Maybe Andy, you might want to weigh in on that, but I mean, we've never indexed a version store, even in regular.
Yeah, I was just going to say we've never indexed a version store.
Yeah, so this is just, we're just being consistent here. So it's not indexed, and I think sort of a follow-on question to that is, if you wanted to add the version store, could you do that?
The version store is not straightforward to index. It doesn't follow the same pattern as a normal store. So things are indexed in quite the same way. There's a different structure in the version store to store the version information. And so that means it's actually not straightforward to index. You have to do some unmangling to turn it back into something that looked like what you wanted to find, if that makes sense. So because we store it in a funny way, it doesn't make sense to index it.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
cool. Right, so that's the schema, one big part of this search server. The next thing is how you configure, how indexing and searching should behave. That's done in this Solr config. So here, what's interesting here is there's loads of stuff here, but what's interesting when you're working with Alfresco is that you have specific Alfresco update handlers, and you have specific request handlers. Normally you use a select request handler for when you use Solr, but when you actually use Alfresco, it's not using that, so it's using these kind of request handlers here, Alfresco, and for full text search, which is from Share UI, for example, if you do a search, it's going to use these request handlers instead. So that's important to know. I'll show you that in the Solr admin. If you do a search there, it's not going to work, but I can show you how you can tweak that. Right. Right. Let's go into the Solr admin. So we've seen how the Solr files and stuff have been kind of integrated with Alfresco, and we see where the configuration is for each core. Actually, one more thing I need to mention. This directory here, the Alfresco data type that's used in the schema, it's going to read all this model information here, so it's actually knowing about all the fields from each model. So it knows about the fields here by constantly querying Alfresco for new country models and then storing them. So, all right, let's look at the admin interface. So you would use HTTPS there also to access that. It's forced. And now I've already kind of installed a search, client search in my browser. The way you do that is, let's see if I have it here. So if you want to know more in detail how that's done, if you're in the browser, you go to Tools Option, Advanced Encryption, Your Certificate, then you browse to the key store. It's available in two places, either under Alt Data, or you can just browse into the Alfresco War Explorer app and get the browser search and import that, and then use that, and then you can access Solr admin. Here you will first select what core you're interested in, and now you're in the Solr administration interface. I were accessing the schema and configuration via the file system. You might not be able to do that in a production environment, but then you can log into admin, click schema, and you can see what's actually been deployed in this core for live content. The same thing for configuration for this core, so you can see if it's actually using what you think. Schema browser is quite interesting because here you can see all the fields that's been actually used to index stuff. It's not particularly nice UI here. A better thing is to actually use Luke. I'll show that later to see how it's actually using those fields. Statistics, you can go here and see how many docs have been indexed. So, here you normally can try out queries. So if I do a search for Alfresco, I should get loads of hits, but I'm not getting anything really. So what I need to do is I need to actually change select to use an Alfresco request handler. So first I'm using the Solr web app, then I'm actually using the live core, which for workspace content, which is called Alfresco. And this is the request handler, so I would need to use Alfresco full text search. I'm gonna go here and see how that is done. So if I, for example, do this, copy this stuff here, it's not much difference from the other one. It's just changing select Alfresco. Now you see Alfresco, that's because the core is Alfresco and the request handler is also called Alfresco, and the query, full text query text that I want to search for is also Alfresco. Return 10 rows. So I'm getting back 10 rows here now. If I wanted to use, you see 75 entries there. If I actually go to here and I do a search for Alfresco via repository, I'm getting something similar. If I want to search for a name, so I want to search for Alfresco, for content here, I can do the same from view. I have to show you how that works with the full text search. So I can use the ASTS name like this. So now I switched from Alfresco request handler to Alfresco full text search. Queries. Now I can use Lucene query syntax. So I returned 15. So you might wonder, okay, it was actually in here. It was 13. That's because I was searching on content. If I go to folders and search for Alfresco, I'll get one hit. And there was also another authority container. So if I remove the folder and authority container, it will be 13. So you can try out queries here if you're actually working with an extension module and need to do some queries, and then you can build on that to just do. You can add more rows. For example, you add this stuff here to the query. So you can say return 20 rows, so you actually get all 15 here now. And you can say, you can use the Lucene stuff like ID parent, aspect, type. So if I wanted to just return, for example, the folder that match, then I can do a type folder, and I'm just going to get back the folder entry then. Right. Let's move on and see how you can
just make a quick comment?
Actually change back to use Lucene. Now, some customers you might have, you might do an upgrade. I did that once from 3.1 to 4, and they said we don't want to use Solr. So you need to be able to turn Solr off and then just do full reindex with Lucene and then keep going with that. So I'll do that. So what I will do first is just stop Alfresco here. And then I will jump into Alfresco public and change some stuff to have Alfresco not use Solr. So Tomcat, shared classes, Alfresco, Solr stuff. Right. Here you only see a few properties actually that has to do with Solr. If you want to see all properties, as usual, I'll just quickly show you that. As usual, when you want to see all properties available to configure, you go to Alfresco War, Explorer, Classes, Alfresco Repository, and open that repository properties that pretty much contains all the stuff you might need. Might be some stuff in subsystems. So here you see some more stuff that we're going to read later on. right now, we basically want to just turn off Solr and just turn on Lucene. So you do that by turning on the Lucene subsystem and turning off anything that has to do with Solr. So now I told Alfresco use the Lucene subsystem. So it's not enough just to do that, because you need to actually tell Lucene to index everything that's been uploaded. So you set the recovery mode full. That means it goes through all transactions and index all content. What I want to do also, because I have more demos that depend on that, I want to actually completely remove Solr from the installation. So I go here, I can then just remove Solr here, otherwise it will start that Solr up anyway and just take resources. So just delete Solr and then go to Tomcat, conf, and take away Solr web app context and then take away web app. So now I've configured Lucene, removed all Solr stuff. So if everything is nice and working nicely now, I should just start and reindex everything for use with Lucene. Let's see. Start it up. You should see the full reindexing going on here and the Lucene subsystem.
Martin, while that's starting out, I think Andy wanted to make a point on the last section. So Andy, go ahead.
So when you were using the URLs direct, that's okay for debugging, and that's in fact what Alfresco is doing for you behind the scenes when you execute a query. But it's also adding the extra stuff that means that the authentication is enforced at query time. So if you type your query in direct, it will not be enforcing the ACLs that apply to any of the nodes. So if you're going to write your own application that goes to the Solr core and executes queries direct, which in the future we expect.
I show you here how that looks like when you do a full. It's much more stuff that has to do with authority permission and stuff.
Yeah.
So
I didn't include that there. I forgot to mention that you actually need to check permission.
So Andy, I think what you're saying is that getting the URLs directly is great for debugging and development purposes and things like that, but the problem is that unless you add a bunch of other things to the request, the authentication checks will not happen. And therefore, if you need to have security for your content at all, you should not let non-authorized people or your application, hit those URLs. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, perfect.
Cool. So it's now started up and it's using Lucene. It's done that full reindexing. You're basically ready to go again, and you're now using Lucene. So doing queries here should just work the way it did before. Right. Okay. Now, in most, when you start working with it, you're pretty soon going to find requirements to move Solr into its own standalone server for several reasons: memory, consumption, performance, scaling it, and so on. So I'm going to show you how you can now go from Lucene to actually, again, point to a separate Tomcat with Solr installed and configured. So what you need a Tomcat, so you would use the 6035 version because that's what Alfresco 402 supports and uses, so probably best to use that. So you want to grab that. So what I do is basically just grab these files from that distribution and then create a new directory here, call that Alfresco Solr TechDog Live demo, and put them there. What I'm going to do then is grab the Alfresco Solr package and put that here also. To do that, I'm just creating basically a data directory. You can call it whatever you want. I'm going to call it data, and under here I'm going to put all the Alfresco Solr stuff. Basically Apache Solr with Alfresco modifications. So I grab that from Alfresco. So you can download that from the community site or from the enterprise support site. So you will recognize these files and everything because they're the same as when you install Alfresco. Except you don't see workspace and archive because nothing has been indexed. So there wouldn't be any. You don't see Alfresco models either because there hasn't been anything indexed or downloaded from Alfresco. So just grab that and move that into data. So what you have to do now, you have to go to the Solr files and kind of hook them up to Tomcat or vice versa. Tell Tomcat where the Solr web app is and make sure that Solr home and everything is configured. And also you have to do some stuff with SSL, which we're going to go through now. Let's see. Right, so we've done Tomcat, data, Solr, key store. That doesn't come with it, so you need to actually get that from somewhere. You can get it from, you can go to any Alfresco installation under Alf Data, you have a key store, or you can go, if you don't have it there for some reason, you can also go to web apps, Alfresco, webbing, classes, Alfresco, and you will have a key store there also. I'm going to grab it from here. And then I'm going to put that key store, because we're using SSL and client search and stuff, we're going to need it. So under data, I'm going to add that so we have it. Right. Now, we're going to have to tell Tomcat where Solr web app is. And there is a file prepared for us to do that here. Basically, we just need to fill in this stuff here. And then Solr homes, and then it knows how to get going. I'm going to grab, I did this before here, so I'm just going to go conf. And you're going to have to put this here. So I'm going to grab it from here. Actually, I think that directory wasn't correct. Right, so just adding that directory name change. So now I'm telling Tomcat you have your Solr War here, the patched Alfresco one. And then you're going to have all the indexes, all the cores and Solr Home here. So when it knows where Solr home is, it's going to be able to grab, as I showed you before, the other stuff, because then it can go in here. It has the Solr XML, which tells Solr where the cores are that it should manage. And then if it has the cores, it knows about each core's config, and it can get on going with all the stuff. So that pretty much hooks Tomcat up to all the Solr stuff. Then we need to do some stuff in Tomcat because of SSL. And we also need the data there, because that's not something that would be there for each core. So each core here in the conf, we need to tell it where the index for the core is. And I also need to grab the other core for soft deleted content and fix that so it knows where its index is supposed to be. So it's now going to put the new directory there on the data called workspace and then put the index down into that directory. If you have your Alfresco host somewhere else than locally, then you would also have to change. You would have to go and change this also. Because I have both Tomcats on the same host now, I don't need to do that. Right, so now over to HTTPS. So we need to hook Tomcat up to be able to respond to HTTPS. So we need to add a connector. I have one already prepared here. So I go into conf and Tomcat server configuration. I'm also going to change some ports at the same time because I'm using two Tomcats on the same box, so it's going to clash. So I'm just going to change these two 9s instead of 8s. Connector and add the SSL connector and just do this. So I'm pointing to the key store with a search for Tomcat, and then I'm telling it where another store is with trusted search from a certificate authority, so it can have a complete chain. So you would have to actually, in a production environment, if you want to use SSL, you have to change and generate new certs. Right. We also need to add. Sorry.
Do you want your slashes to be mixed back and forward? Doesn't matter.
I think there was some things that didn't work if it wasn't backslash. I'm not sure, but at one point it didn't work for some reason. I don't know. Probably not an issue, but I'm just keeping them. Good point. Right. So we have client cert authentication. So we need to tell this Tomcat that it's going to be receiving requests from an Alfresco repository client. And this is kind of what's in the cert that we add to Tomcat users. So you need to go in here and just add this user. And then it's going to work. And you need to make sure that you use the same Java version, otherwise you get some weird errors. So I'm just going to point Java home to the Java version I use for Alfresco here. So when I start the Solr. Right. So I'm setting Java home, so it's picked up by the Catalina start files, and then I happen to have this also, Catalina Ops, for debugging, and that's going to clash with the other Tomcat, so I'm just going to set that like that. Right. Now we should be able to start and have our standalone Alfresco modified Solr server.
While that is starting up, Andy, do you want to address the multi-tenancy question? What version do we support multi-tenancy with Solr?
Yeah, because I can't recall exactly what it went out in. So multi-tenancy is in Solr and is live in the cloud with each of the whatever it's called. It's not called tenant in the cloud. I've forgotten the name. But whatever it is called. Sorry.
It's called the network.
Yeah, each network is effectively a tenant, so it's out there and is working. And that went into the code stream a while ago. I can't remember exactly where it went. I think it's in 4.0.1 from memory without going back and explicitly checking.
Yeah, so we're definitely using Solr in the cloud, and each network is a tenant. So our Alfresco cloud is using multi-tenancy. So the person that asked that question, as code comes into cloud and then gets into enterprise, you will have that. So just none of us know the exact version when multi-tenancy support was added for Solr, but I think the general feeling is that that's already in there in 401 or 402.
Right.
I was just going to add.
Ready to continue?
Yes. Is your server up?
Yeah, I just had to change one more port for the AGP protocol, so it didn't clash with the Alfresco Tomcat. So now I got a Solr up and running that will try and talk to Alfresco there. So we need to change some stuff on the Alfresco side also to get it to talk to this Solr new Solr server. So I'm just going to stop it and change to use the Solr. There is my global properties. So I'm changing the port to 9443 there for that Tomcat, and then localhost. If you're running it somewhere else, obviously you have to change that. And now that should be enough. So we restart it. We should get an indication now that it's using the Solr subsystem. It's going to take a minute or two to start, so if there is any questions.
So we have a question about HTTPS and whether that can be disabled from outside of the WebXML file. Doesn't Solr require HTTPS? It actually.
I'll show you how you. The next exercise here is how you turn it off. And there's actually, I think the question might be coming from a colleague of mine. But so we were wondering how you can actually, if you can. There is this WebXML in Tomcat. That's kind of default WebXML. But we can take this discussion when we're coming to that particular section.
Okay.
Right, so we started it up, let's see.
Here's another quick question. I'm sorry, Martin. So someone is asking if they can add additional cores to the embedded Solr install. Say they want to index another website or something, and have the Alfresco Solr be running that core as well. And wondered if that's recommended or if it can be done.
I think that's kind of one of the main benefits of it, that you can, if you have different languages, for example, or if you have other sources of information content in your enterprise that you want to index. But if you have bigger things like the customer I'm working now with, they have separate Solr clusters for example, product information. They're not integrating that with the CMS search, so they keep them separate. But I'm sure you can create another core, and then the question is, how you're going to search for it from Alfresco Share. So what you would have to do, because now it's just hitting the core Alfresco for live content. So if you have another core, or for example called product, that we're kind of indexing some other system, you would have to go in to Share and the search module there and upgrade it. So when you hit search there, it would also search that other core and so on. So you wouldn't get that functionality just out of the box by just adding a core.
Right. Okay, good.
Right. Cool.
You can add in for one, you can dynamically create cores for other stores that you might have in Alfresco. If you want an external kind of index to support an external app, yeah, you can go and edit the Solr config and add all that stuff in. The only thing I would say is that makes your life slightly more difficult when you come to upgrade and you want to maybe move to a different Solr layout and point to the same data and that kind of stuff. So that's the only thing to be aware of, is not make your upgrade life difficult.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think if you were, I think you'd have to really think hard about wanting to add stuff that isn't even related to Alfresco into your Alfresco Solr config. I think you're paying a heavy price for that, so it better be worth it. Okay.
Cool. So now we should be up with using the external Tomcat with Solr for our searches, and so that's working. And let's see what we can do now. You can now see what happens if you turn Solr off. You can then get a hands-on experience what's actually using Solr or not, and what's not. So if I just turn this off and I go back to and do a search, probably going to return nothing, like 0 entries. So you will not get an exception or an error or anything. So you need to have system monitoring tools to actually monitor the Solr server that is up and so on. If I, on the other hand, go here, just browsing the repository, all this stuff is just canned DB queries, so I can still get to files and things even if Solr is down, obviously. Right.
Yep. So Martin, we're over our time for today. I wonder if is there anything critical that you wanted to show before we wrap it up here? And also, I'd like to remind
I can show that's pretty much it. I had how to show a plane, how to do a plane connection. Do we have time for that, or?
I think we need to wrap it up because I know a couple of the people have meetings that are following right on to this one. So maybe
basically I can show you just a couple of pointers how you do that.
Okay.
So you basically stop Alfresco, and then you have to set Solr to secure none, basically telling Alfresco, don't use secure HTTPS when you talk to Solr. Then, in Alfresco WebXML, you need to take away the security constraints for the client authentication that will prohibit Solr from talking to Alfresco. And that was part of one question, I think. On the Solr side, the same thing. You say Alfresco secure cons none, and then just take away so Alfresco can search without being prohibited by these security constraints, and then you start. So that's quite easy to actually turn off HTTPS. And also a point on how you can how you rebuild the index. You basically just stop the web app. You can delete the index directories, basically the archive and work space, and then you just start it up. You can optionally also delete the Alfresco models, so they are down. That's pretty much it.
Excellent. Well, so Martin, you'll be speaking at DEF CON in Berlin, right?
Yeah, that'd be cool.
And Andy also has a talk, if I'm not mistaken. Andy, are you speaking in?
I don't believe I do.
No? Oh. All right, I'll have to check my schedule here, make sure that's true. But so definitely, folks, join us next month again for Tech Talk Live. It will be September 5th at an hour earlier than what we started today. And also go sign up for DEF CON. We have early bird registration running until early September, so get out there and get signed up. So it looks like Martin is sharing some additional resources related to Solr and Alfresco, which is great. Thank you for doing that. And we will send out the slides and the recorded webinar as soon as we can. So thanks, everybody. Martin, thank you for your time. Andy, thank you.
Thanks.
And, oh, there's one question, Martin, will you, that demo script text that you were following along, will you make that available, maybe post it on your blog, or?
I'll send it to my team, and she can send it with the rest of the stuff.
Okay, super, thank you. Maybe we'll put that out on a wiki or something for everybody else. All right, well, thanks for attending, everyone, and we look forward to doing this again next month.